Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
This week on the Taking 20 podcast.
So if you're not experienced making up a backstory, here's my default, middle-of-the-road suggestion for how you could write a very simple backstory for your character. Thank you for listening to the Taking 20 podcast, episode 274, talking about character backstories. I want to thank this week's sponsor, toilets. I think my toilet was a little embarrassed that I was using it the other day because while using it, I felt it flush. Do you have any topics you'd like me to hear me discuss or questions you'd like me to answer or maybe issues with your group I can help with? If so, please send me the ideas on the socials. The links, by the way, are in the description, or email me, feedback@taking20podcast.com, or you can message me on my Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/taking20podcast. Let's start this episode off with some interesting Wizards of the Coast news. It looks like they're going a different direction since Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins left. They've listed a position opening for a TRPG publishing lead that will coordinate second and third-party content for D&D. In looking at the job description on LinkedIn, it reads, honestly, like project management, making sure that the contractors and subcontractors provide the material expected, at the quality expected, and stay under budget while doing so. I have a guess as to what this means for D&D going forward. A lot of their materials, I think, are probably going to be written by external IP collaborators, meaning either there won't be a lot of official books going forward, or what I think is probably going to happen, the official D&D books will no longer be written by Wizards of the Coast employees, but by contractors and subcontractors. I am honestly kind of ambivalent about the news, but that doesn't make for good hot takes that get clicks for podcast episodes. So I'll just say that third-party content for D&D already exists. If you head over to D&D Beyond, the quality is all over the place. I think this person's going to have their hands full because as someone who's managed large projects with a lot of external entities, it can be like herding cats on meth. Listen, I have no ill will towards Wizards of the Coast. As a matter of fact, I put a link to the job listing down in the description. Go check it out if you're interested. I've been very vocal about some of Wizards of the Coast's poor decisions in the past, like their use of Pinkerton agents like it's the fucking 1880s, or their attempts to turn D&D into a live service offering, but I also praise them, like for the 2024 edition of the game and their recent regular surveys getting feedback from the community at large. To whomever accepts that position, I wish them luck and I hope they listen to the gaming community and maybe make D&D the draw it once was. It's still the gorilla in the room, but where it used to be 800 pounds, now there's a lot of other options out there and they are growing by leaps and bounds. Thank you for listening. Now on to the character backstories. To be very direct, which probably makes for a bad podcast episode, the decision of whether or not to create a backstory for your character depends largely on the game you're playing. If you're participating in a role-play heavy campaign that prioritizes narrative depth and character development, then yeah, you should come up with something for a backstory, even if it's a short one. Giving your character a defined past of some sort provides justification for the role-play choices that you make, the skills that you choose, and the general motivations of your character. Why does your investigator hoard gold like that? Oh, they grew up dirt poor and they're always worried they're going to have a great idea and no way to fund it? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Why is your sorcerer so withdrawn from everybody? Well, they were abused or teased because they were a tiefling? Okay. It's only tangentially related, but with a huge apology to Marcus Garvey, one of my favorite quotes is, "People without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." Garvey was talking about an entire continent of people, but the same idea could hold for your character's backstory. Giving your character a history will ground them in the present and give them a strong sense of who they are based on what they experienced before. Furthermore, a backstory gives game masters and your fellow players a lot of ways to connect to your character, role-play with your character, interact with your character. Maybe you both were in the Bellflower Network or were spies for Neverwinter or hunted mammoths together in the Great Wintry North. Rather than just being a fighter and a barbarian, now your characters have a reason to know each other. It gives you that root to show depth of your character and why you're adventuring together. Case in point, I've mentioned my cleric in recent episodes. She fought for a long time at the World Wound, a rift in the plains where the demons poured through and the peoples of Galarian fought to keep them contained. She saw the destruction and, in a lot of ways, senseless death of wannabe hero after wannabe hero, dying of wounds that she couldn't fully heal. She even bears the scars of those years. Emotionally, she's largely disconnected from most people, having lost so many people she was close to. And people that she heals are more slabs of meat than anything else, which honestly is ironic, given how hard she fights to make sure that innocents don't suffer. That backstory gives context to when she says to the sorcerer, "Oh, no, you don't get to die today, pretty boy, get over here," after he takes a critical hit to the chest from some sort of weird infected dinosaur. Yeah, that happened, by the way. It's a fun campaign being run by my friend and author Tom Robinson, who, by the way, is updating one of his older custom modules he wrote for Pathfinder 1e and bringing it up to remastered Pathfinder 2e. When it comes out, by the way, you're going to hear it from me because I played it back in the day and had an absolute blast doing it. Keep an eye out for the adventure The Forbidden Sands, which will be out at some point on Pathfinder Infinite and probably other places as well. I will definitely announce when that happens. Back to the topic at hand, though. There are times when a backstory is extremely helpful. A backstory can be incredibly helpful, for example, to explain why your character is what they are, providing the background context for their class, skills, current situation the character is in. For example, if your investigator hoards gold or your sorcerer is withdrawn and antisocial, the backstory gives the reason why. It's the root that gives depth to your character. Secondly, if your character has a strong belief in something, whatever, a cause, a religion, anything that's core to the character, backstory helps reveal why your character believes what they believe. What actions or events in their past made them a family woman, a religious person, a champion for social justice. Without a backstory, then yeah, okay, fine, that's who they are. But with a backstory, it can be a dramatic reveal of what happened behind the curtain to make them act like this now. Your character's motivations, moral code, and deeply held convictions, like my cleric's unwavering commitment to protecting innocents, after her time in the Whirlwind, by the way, witnessing young people by the thousand dying at the end of a demonic sword or rent in two by abyssal claws, these motivations are born from their past experiences, and these background events can be dramatic reveal moments in your role-play-heavy games. Finally, and most simply, you need a backstory if the GM requires you to have one. Many campaigns, especially those focused on heavy narrative, make backstory a mandatory part of character creation to ground the character in the world. Ensure they have connections that the GM and other players can use for plot hooks. That backstory should be discussed with your DM and around the table at session 0 so you can look for ways to connect characters to each other and to the world at large. On the other hand, if you are simply with friends, slinging dice, eating pizza, and there's not a lot of in-character talking, acting, etc., it's more of a tactical game. Backstory is only necessary if it's fun for you. In these casual, action-focused games, a complicated history would probably go unused, and the focus really of the game remains on the here and now. All that time coming up with the whys and wherefores of your character would help you get into your character's headspace, but you have to expect that it won't come up during the course of the game. So yeah, come up with a backstory if you're in a roleplay heavy game, you want to create one to ground your character and its beliefs, or if your DM requires it. So, my beloved GMs out there, to flip that advice around on the other side of the screen, should you absolutely require your players to create a backstory for their characters? I'd say if it's a roleplay heavy game, yeah, sure, absolutely require it. Or if you're willing to spend a little bit of time to weave that character's backstory into the history and narrative of your world, then yes, encourage your players to do it. Even if they choose not to, those that do can be more integrated to the game world. For example, if you ask your characters to come up with a brief backstory and they come up with the fact that their bard used to be a courtesan for a minor noble, you should look for a way to weave that into your game world. Who's the noble? Where are they from? Why aren't they still a courtesan for that minor lord? Did they betray their former boss? Were they disgusted with the constant rumors that they were just forming for kingdom elites because they were having sex to keep their position? Oh, they're not really talented. They just earned their position on their back. That kind of thing. They're sick of that intimation. They strike out to prove their talent away from these baseless or accurate accusations being made. DMs can also use the backstories to really twist the knife against a character, which sounds awful, by the way, but it gives you something dramatic and tragic to happen to the people from that character's background. For example, having the big bad attack the character's dad, if the character's dad is listed as an important part of their life, it takes it to a different level than if it just attacks random blacksmith number 27 in your game world. If a key part of your planned adventure is a character arc for one or more characters, then yes, having your characters come up with a backstory can show where their arc started and will make their eventual growth or redemption even more powerful and have more of an impact. Without a backstory, you're seeing their journey from middle to end. But backstory can show those initial events, and you'll see the full growth arc of that character. Okay, Jeremy, you've convinced me. I want to come up with a backstory for my character. How do I do it? Well, I'm glad you asked, person in my head. Honestly, start simple, short, succinct, uncomplicated. While I love it when a player is so into their character they make a 7-page backstory, I love ya. I'm not reading all that shit. I have the rest of the world to design and run and keep straight in my head. So if you want to write a novel for your backstory for your benefit, feel free to do so. But writing a long backstory and expecting your GM, or worse, your players, to read it is frankly unreasonable. They have their own character to design, and yours is not as important to them as your character is to you. So if you're not experienced making up a backstory, here's my default, middle-of-the-road suggestion for how you could write a very simple backstory for your character. First off, maximum length, 1 paragraph. Not a thesis, not a pamphlet, not even a page. 1 paragraph. And as a matter of fact, that paragraph needs to be about 3 sentences long. Sentence 1. Where'd your character come from? My character hails from an isolationist nomadic tribe of warriors and sages who continually travel the great desert looking for water. Or, my character grew up the child of a farmer in an unremarkable village to the west. Faced with a life of growing wheat for the next 70 years, he stole a little money and set off to adventure. In 1 sentence, be able to say where you're from. Or is your character from a coastal city destroyed by the water elementals in retribution for our leaders' depraved actions of the past? So the first sentence, tell me where you're from. Second sentence, your character wants something. What is it? It doesn't have to be overly complicated. It could be as simple as they want excitement or money or better life prospects than they would have had otherwise. They're the 5th child of some minor noble somewhere, and when faced the prospect of becoming a monk or nun, they said no. But I would encourage you to be creative about what your character wants. Sure, money, power, wealth, fame, those are just fine as far as motivations go, but there are other options. They want redemption for some past failure or with the church. They're fulfilling an oath that they gave to someone important, especially if it was a dying oath. They are trying to prove their research right. They want to prove their doubters wrong. In the Dragonlance series, early on in Dragons of Autumn Twilight, you meet Goldmoon and Riverwind, 2 plainspeople of the Keishu tribe. They are in separate castes but love each other. To win the right to marry her, Goldmoon's father Aerothorn sends him on a quest to find proof that the gods exist. Against an ocean of odds, he does. I'm not going to spoil how, and even after all of that, he returns with proof. Aerothorn still refuses to give his blessing to their marriage. Goldmoon loved Riverwind, so they left the tribe together, and they meet the other protagonists in the Inn of the Last Home in Solace, and voila, we're off on an adventure. Riverwind's reason for the first quest was that he wanted to marry Goldmoon. That's what he wanted. And the reason that they left together was because they wanted to marry and protect each other. Little did they know, by the way, that what they would find in the lost places of the world would shape the rest of the world for all of time, effectively. Sorry, I have some Dragonlance knowledge stuck up in this archaic brain of mine, and sometimes it just kind of leaks out. The knowledge, by the way, not the brain. Brain is leaking out. Please see a competent medical professional. Anyway, your character wants to find the lost city of Atlantis, or destroy the heretical scroll of Dabagoth, or find out the fate of colony Epsilon 13. Come up with a 1-sentence motivation for your character for that second sentence of your backstory. Lastly, there's a conflict of some sort that's either preventing your character from getting what they want, or some duty that they are called to fulfill. What's that conflict? What's that duty? Are they duty bound by their liege lord to take up this quest? Was their family heirloom stolen by the cult of the Whispering Reed? Are they thwarting a rival? Were they excommunicated from their faith and the church is looking to make an example of them? Come up with these 3 sentences for your backstory. Where did they come from? What do they want? And what's the conflict of their story? For example, the cleric I'm running in the Pathfinder 2e Adventure Spore War is a veteran of fighting at the World Wound. Her backstory: she's from a faraway village and migrated as a part of a holy pilgrimage. She fought demons at the World Wound and wants to prevent the unnecessary suffering of others. The internal conflict is that she is tired of fighting, tired of constant death, tired of what feels like trying to sweep back the ocean tide of evil. She is older and has proven her mettle 100 times over. But she is better suited to fighting these monsters than so many others around her. So she soldiers on, nursing a growing list of wounds, both physical and emotional, knowing she will probably die at the hands of an infernal fiend, but better her than someone who can't defend themselves. Boom! There we go. She's emotionally detached. She'll help you out, but don't expect a good bedside manner. She doesn't fear death because she knows it'll find her eventually. She doesn't expect to grow rich, have a family, become someone's nana. Nope. She fights because she must. Because she's better equipped to do so than just about anyone else, and because the threat to her adopted homeland is real, immense, and requires everyone to do what they can. 3 sentences, easy to remember, easy to roleplay. You don't get to die today, pretty boy. We've got more demons to kill, or I've seen enough people die. Her backstory tells you she is the living embodiment of, quote, just because I heal you doesn't necessarily mean I like you. Whether backstories are necessary and the benefits you get in having one for your character, like tying it to the world and giving your character some depth at the table, depends on the circumstances of your game. Use the 3-sentence method for writing out your first backstory. Where are you from? What do you want? And what's the conflict your character has? Take some time and think about your next character's backstory, even if it won't come up at the table. If nothing else, it'll give you practice doing it, and writing, like anything else, is a muscle that needs exercise. Give your character some depth and roots, and if you do, I'd be willing to bet that you and your friends would have fun doing it. Thank you so much for listening. I'd like to get your feedback either via social media or email, feedback@taking20podcast.com. I also get comments sometimes on the Spotify version of my feed, so feel free to leave comments there as well. Please send me a message. Let me know your thoughts on the episode. Tune in next episode where, you know what I just thought of? I haven't had a monster series in a long time. I mean, it's probably been half a year. So next time, let's talk about some golems. But before I go, I want to thank this week's sponsor, toilets. Toilets are a lot like celebrities. Every now and then, they really make a splash. This has been episode 274, all about character backstories. My name is Jeremy Shelley, and I hope that your next game is your best game.
The Taking 20 podcast is copyright 2026 by Jeremy Shelley. The opinions or views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the host. References to game system content are copyright their respective publishers.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.